Oregon's 5th District has been led by Congressman Kurt Schrader for 6 terms. Now he's got serious competition for the seat from the mayor of Milwaukie, Mark Gamba. The former National Geographic photographer has seen firsthand what climate change is doing to our planet and is championing policies to combat the damage. Can he rise from City Hall to Capitol Hill? From KGW News, this is Straight Talk with Laural Porter.
Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Laural Porter. We're still months away from Oregon's 2020 primary election, but some races are beginning to take shape. 5th District Congressman Kurt Schrader has some competition in the Democratic primary from Milwaukee's Mayor Mark Gamba. The 5th District represents Oregon's Central Coast through Salem, north to the southern Portland suburbs, and east to the summit of Mount Hood. It includes Lincoln, Polk, and Marion counties and parts of Tillamook, Clackamas, Benton, and Multnomah counties. It is a diverse county, almost evenly divided between Republicans, Democrats, and unaffiliated voters. Schrader's opponent says the congressman is out of touch with the everyday problems of everyday people in the district. And he says the district is ready for a more progressive representative. Here to tell us why he thinks he would better serve the 5th District, welcome to my guest, Milwaukie Mayor Mark Gamba. Welcome to Straight Talk, your first time here.
Yeah, it is. Thank you for having me. And more importantly, thank you for doing a show like this. I think in the sort of modern media world, shows that really explore policy and politics on a just level-headed way are pretty far and few between.
Well, thank you. We're honored to do this and to have you on the show. You announced in April that you're going to run for Congress against 6th-term Congressman Kurt Schrader. That's a tall order to beat an incumbent, especially who's been in office for so long. Tell us about the moment you decided this is what you want to do. You want to run for Congress.
It probably was when I was in the middle of reading the IPCC report last year that came out that finally put a deadline that said, okay, we have 12 years to stop the worst effects of climate change. Because I had been toying with someday maybe, county commission and then maybe the federal level. But, that's a long-term play. And I did that math in my head and I said, yeah, I'll get to Congress about the time it's too late. So
now is the time for you.
Now is the time.
Well, we're going to talk more about your passion for addressing climate change in just a moment, but I want to let our viewers and listeners know a little bit more about you. Mayor Gamba spent 30 years as a photojournalist with clients like National Geographic, Sports Illustrated, and Adidas. He grew up in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. He started his family in Bend, Oregon, and moved to Milwaukie in the early 2000s, a city with a population of about 21,000 people. He joined the town's planning commission, and in 2012, he won a seat on the Milwaukie City Council. He was then elected mayor in 2015 in a special election after his predecessor took a private sector job. Mayor Gamba was re-elected in 2018 without any opponents, and he announced his run for Congress this spring. So Mayor Gamba, why do you think you would better represent the 5th District than the current congressman?
It's interesting. A lot of people try and paint this as a red-blue thing, centrist, purple, all of that. And I really think politics in America, that is sort of the narrative that people like to spin, that's the battle. But really, the issue is more the people and the 1%, I guess, for lack of a better term, the corporations. The same, if you sit down at a kitchen table with a Republican farmer or a Democratic shop owner in Milwaukie, they have the same issues they're dealing with. They're dealing with the cost of housing. They're dealing with the cost of health care. They're dealing with, some of them actually are concerned about climate change and understand what that's going to mean to their kids and their grandkids. And those are not issues that are, or should be, partisan issues. They're people issues. So I've been a very practical mayor, I think, and solved the problems. And I find that actually most mayors are practical people. They solve the problems that their city has. And I just think we need a lot more of that in Congress.
Well, Congressman Schrader was our guest on Straight Talk last week, and I asked him about what you said, that he's out of touch with these everyday problems that everyday people have. And here's what he said, and then I'll get your response.
Well, I think with all due respect, my potential challenger's out of touch. Perhaps he didn't notice that my district did not vote for Kate Brown for governor, that this district voted for Dennis Richardson, a Republican, for Secretary of State. and voted again, with the business community on Measure 97. So I don't think he understands where this district, frankly, is. I consider myself very progressive, particularly in the social scene. But my district is a very diverse district. It actually is a good, in my opinion, microcosm of this country. It's got 30+% Democrat, 30+% independent, and 30% Republican. So I'd like to think I'm probably one of the more balanced legislators there.
Mayor, your thoughts on that comment?
Well, the one place I'll agree with him is that it is like a microcosm of the country. There's kind of that similar spread. When he says he's in touch, when you have 75% of the voters in this state saying that they want universal health care, right? That was a poll that just came out, what was it, last week? And he has come out opposing Medicare for all. That doesn't sound like somebody who's in touch with his voters. He just voted recently against the $15 minimum wage. Well, the folks on the coast that clean the hotel rooms and work in the restaurants and the people that work on the farms throughout the Willamette Valley, that's the district, they are living in poverty at the minimum wage. Now, granted, Oregon's minimum wage is slowly ramping up to $15 an hour, but his vote recently against a federal $15 minimum wage essentially gives an advantage to states that aren't doing that.
And where is the federal wage now? It's only like $7 or something.
$7.25, which, if you think about that puts people making that living in poverty. I mean, and does anyone think somebody should be working a full-time job and living in poverty? So we are long overdue for raising the federal minimum wage, and I think doing that begins to correct some of the issues that this country is facing right now.
Well, we'll get to health care in just a moment because I want to dig into that, but I know you're really passionate about climate change. You mentioned that. You said your work as a photographer for National Geographic has really kind of informed who you are and ignited your passion for protecting the planet and its species. And you tell a story about how you almost got hit in the head with a whale shark's tail fin during your work as a nature photographer, and we have that picture here. Tell us about this and how it changed your views on the planet and what you want to do about it.
Well, I don't know that it changed so much as it crystallized a little bit. I mean, it was a moment. I'm on assignment for the Geographic to shoot whale sharks. It's in the Indian Ocean off the Ningaloo Reef of Australia. And the water is thick with plankton. That's why the whale sharks are there. And I'm just mass snorkel fins and a camera, no scuba tank. And because it's thick, the visibility is low. So when one of these giant creatures is coming, you don't see it until the last minute. And suddenly, this school bus-sized shark appears, coming straight at me. And it's funny because I know that whale sharks are plankton eaters, right, predominantly. But your lizard brain looks at that and goes, "Oh my God, that is a really big shark," and it's coming right at me. So I took a real quick breath and I dove down to the shark's level and I started shooting. Kept coming at me. I'm swimming backwards, shooting this thing to keep it in frame. And I kept thinking that eventually it would turn away, right? And at the last second, almost out of breath, I remember tucking the camera into my chest because it was clear the shark was not going to turn away. And I ducked under the shark's mouth. And so I'm rolling down the belly of the shark. And it occurred to me, I was like, wow, when I pass that tail, if I get whacked in the head, I could be unconscious. Fortunately, obviously, I didn't get whacked in the head. But what's interesting about it, and the moment that to me is so important in the conversation, is that when I climbed out on the dive boat to change film, the captain came up to me and he said, "That was wild. As the shark went over you, it kind of raised up in the water column, and then as its tail passed you, it stopped finning."
So it tried to avoid you?
So the shark was trying to keep from hurting me. And so obviously it resulted in my second cover for National Geographic. But more importantly, that very close encounter with the obviously sentient and empathetic being sort of crystallized my view that there's millions of these other sentient creatures on this planet that aren't damaging this planet, and yet the things we are doing to the planet are very likely going to kill them, going to wipe them out. We're in one of the greatest extinction periods in the history of the planet right now.
Including plastic. And you've been known to make bold statements to really stand out. And we have a photo of you from 2011 when you dressed up as a plastic bag monster when you appeared before the Portland City Council to advocate for a plastic bag ban.
Yep.
So were you successful in that?
Yes, we were. The Portland Council passed that. I tried to get the Milwaukie, this was before I was on the council in Milwaukee, and I tried to get the Milwaukee Council to pass it, and they didn't go there. We just passed it recently, my council did, I think last year. But now the states superseded it anyway, so.
So you've said you think that Kurt Schrader should do more to address climate change, that Congress is just tinkering with things. I asked Congressman Schrader to respond to that last week, and here's what he said.
Well, I'd say I'm 10 years prior to him coming to office. I voted for the Energy Independence Act back in 2009, 2010, when we were trying to do a cap and trade bill, if you might remember back. That was cutting edge back. Now, he's coming to the party a little bit late. That's fine. I'm glad he's coming to the party. But I was there long before he was in terms of trying to address the impact of fossil fuels on our climate. It is an emergency right now. We actually passed a bill in the House to get us back into the Paris Accord so we could be part of the solution, part of the discussion.
Your thoughts on Congressman Schrader's comments?
The cap and trade bill he was talking about was pretty weak soup, and frankly, it was 20 years too late. The federal government has known about climate change for over 30 years. Cap and trade and those kinds of concepts were not a bad idea 30 years ago. If we just started them 30 years ago, we might actually be in a position to deal with this, but we didn't. That's a slow burn kind of policy. We need to set some kind of market rate on all the fossil fuels. We need to stop subsidizing the fossil fuel industry. And then we need to do a whole lot more proactively with all kinds of things, from the way we farm to the way we manage our trees, manage our forests, and clearly things around building new energy sources and maximizing that, smart grids. There's 100 things to do, and frankly, Congressman Schrader hasn't done any of them. Matter of fact, he recently opposed. So there's a Senate bill that would start to make buildings more energy efficient more quickly, right? There's an energy efficiency portion of the building code at the federal level. This bill would make it happen faster. Congressman Schrader in the House has floated a bill that was written by the Home Builders Association that not only keeps that from happening, keeps the federal level from ramping up faster, it also precludes states from doing the same. So in actuality, the work he does is in opposition to stopping climate change, and he certainly has never proposed or done anything that to the level of power and efficiency that is going to be required to do this.
I want to touch on healthcare because that's another place that you diverge in your opinions, and you mentioned this. You are for Medicare for all, universal health care. He supports the Affordable Care Act, shoring it up. Why do you think your way is the better way?
Well, so I've spent time in other countries, and I've actually, unfortunately, had the misfortune or fortune of experiencing their health care. One was Mexico, one was New Zealand. In both instances, I got really quick, really good health care, and it cost me nothing, and I don't even live there. And in both times, I tried to hand them the National Geographic credit card and said, no, I need to pay this. But they're like, no. It's all covered. So I don't think many Americans have experienced that here in America. At the very best, if you have great insurance, you're going to have an argument with your insurance company about, well, is that thing covered or is that not covered? Oh, did you just go out of our system, or all of those things? Not to mention the fact that we've got millions of Americans that don't have any health insurance, millions more that have health insurance with the deductibles so high that they can't access health insurance because they can't afford the $10,000 deductible. So the long and short of that is we have millions of Americans that are not getting any health care.
Let me ask you about the cost, though, because Medicare was just reported earlier this summer will run out of money, they say 3 years earlier than expected in 2026. If this country is having a difficult time paying for Medicare as we know it today, how is it going to afford Medicare for everyone?
Sure, that's a great question. So the thing that people forget is we spend twice as much on health care per capita in this country as any other country. Twice as much. And yet we have millions of people that aren't getting any of that health care. The money's there. The problem is the money is being siphoned off into insurance company profits, into pharmaceutical company profits. When the only thing you're paying is a little more taxes for your health insurance, for your health care, all of the other things, the deductibles and the co-pays and the ridiculous pharmaceutical charges, all of that goes away. We will be able to negotiate pharmaceutical prices just like every other country in the world does. We will be able to set a standard that is much higher than what most people, frankly, 50% of the population experience right now.
So you think that'll solve the problem? We'll have plenty of money for Medicare for everyone?
We're spending more right now than any other country. How is it? I mean, we're America, right? We like to think that we can do everything better than everybody else. And in this particular instance, we are not. We are doing it worse. We are out of the top 11 industrialized nations. Guess which one we are? 11th in health outcomes for our people. And that's not because we don't have great doctors, nurses, hospitals. We do. It's because there are so many people that don't get the health care, and that drives down the health outcomes numbers.
Mayor Gamba, so much more to talk about. When we come back, we're going to talk about why the mayor will not accept PAC money in his run for Congress, and we'll talk about what's happening in Milwaukee. We're back in 2 minutes.